that tornado warning, the original severe part of that did for a time make its way into the south side here. But I think from that standpoint, from that tornado concern, that should end up staying well south of Rochester. But again, we need to continue to watch the evolution and the progression of this simply from the standpoint, these things can jump, these things can come alive. So we're going to see if we can get a new scan coming in here, and you're going to periodically see me pop off. I'm going to do that right now, in fact. I'm here alone at the moment, but we're going to pull up National Weather Service chat. And I just want to get a peek here to see what our friends at Buffalo are talking about here, just making sure we're covering all of our bases. All right, everything's still train on the tracks with this. Obviously, if we start getting some damage reports or any of the light coming in here, we're going to have to bring that to you. So let me do this. I'm going to bring up our debris tracker here. It's tough in this part of the world to generate a hit here to be able to showcase debris. And what we're looking at is something called correlation coefficient, CC for short. It's basically radar's way. It sends out these beams and it measures how similarly the shapes that it encounters are. So basically, if you've got a storm with a bunch of raindrops, they're going to be the same shape, the same size. If you've got a tornado on the ground, that tornado presumably is lofting debris into the atmosphere. That could be trees, branches, that could be parts of homes, what have you. That's all not normal shape, and you get what we call a CC hit. So you would have a bullseye somewhere in that parent rotation that would tell us, look, we've got debris. There's really only one thing that's going to be capable of producing that debris, and that would be a tornado. So I do not see that. That's fantastic news. That does not take away from the reality that we have an active tornado warning here, and that possibility, at a minimum, of damaging wind gusts will continue to plow its way right along 20 here. So York, you're going to be next in line. We're probably going to get a new scan coming up here in just a few minutes. I'm going to walk back again. We'll take this out of play mode here, and we're going to get one more check from the National Weather Service here, so hang tight. You'll still be able to see all of this on your TV screen, but I'm going to pop this back over. National Weather Service issuing additional warnings, by the way. We're not so much covering those here. Obviously, the immediacy of the tornado situation here. I don't see anything, and that's a good thing, folks. What we don't want to see is the National Weather Service going, look, we've got eyes on this. We've got folks who are seeing it. We've got damage reports somewhere. None of that coming to fruition here. So there you go. We're about ready to open up what would otherwise be our 4 o'clock newscast here. Obviously, this is kind of taken over how things go. Tornado warning is in effect right now for northeast Wyoming County, and then getting into Livingston. If you're watching us from York, if you're watching us from the Avon area, if you have a zip code here on the south side of Wheatland, you are included in this too. You've got to be in your tornado safe place. One of two options are happening with this storm right now. It's either producing or in the process of producing a tornado, which is why we have that warning, or at a minimum here, this thing is almost certainly spitting out damaging straight line winds. And we have seen that at times with very aggressive wind signatures here. I will say now that we've got this new scan, and I always make comments like this, I don't say it loosely. I want to put this in the proper context here. This new scan does not show me evidence here that the possibility of a tornado is tightening up, or basically our chance of a tornado is increasing. That is a good thing. What I see when I look at this right now is a storm that does still have some spin in there. You see a little bit of a kink showing up in the overall velocity signature, but this more linear look of this red and pink color as it continues to plow its way eastward looks to me more indicative of a damaging straight line wind event. We got to be very clear on what that means and what it doesn't mean, because we've said this before last week. If you're going to get an EF0 tornado that produces 75-mile-an-hour winds, for example, you care very little if it was a spinning tornado that did it or straight line winds that did it. The tornado is obviously kind of the sexier thing here. Everybody gets worked up over tornado warnings, as they should, but it does not negate the reality that this is a very strong storm, that a severe thunderstorm warning alone should be taken very seriously in that regard. And that's the point we really want to hammer home with this. Tornado or not, this thing means business. This is one of our stronger storms that we have had working through the area. Now, you'll note this little black line right there. That is the boundary here of Monroe County. So you ask the question, all right, Eric, so I'm in Rochester. Is this something that I've got to be worried about? Well, you're going to have storms coming on through. Frankly, you have a severe thunderstorm warning still on the south side here. But the reason that we're on right now, and the chief storm in question, is going to stay off to your south. It is going to pour. For anybody that's getting ready to head home here within the next 30 or so minutes in and around Rochester, it is not going to be a lot of fun. So that is our reality out of this. But we're not overly concerned with you in the Rochester Metro right now. And folks, as I say this here, if you're in the control room right now, I know we've got Leanne who's out with Emily. Leanne has been kind of asked to go out and follow some of this before we got into the tornado warning coverage. Let me know in my ear here if at any point we've got any capability of tapping into Leanne and Emily live. As soon as we can get them up, and frankly, I don't even care where they are here. I know they're going to be in this general vicinity, but I would love to get some boots on the ground just showcasing what this thing is doing and hopefully what this thing is not doing too. So we'll step back here. I'm going to go back into my tried and true this is what we call reflectivity, by the way. This is what you have on any radar app that you've got on your phone. This is velocity. This is really the big ticket thing for me right now that I'm looking at to try to ascertain if we've got anything in here that's going to be actually producing a tornado right now. And again, if we've got this, we may have a little bit of an issue right in there. So right along the area of York here, this is 36. That is 20. You've got Leroy farther off to the north, and I would imagine here a new scan is going to be coming in shortly. Storms firing south of that. You can very clearly see how that particular cell, that storm, is really the main event here. We've got strong damaging wind gust potential along the leading edge of all of this with all of that red color here, but thankfully this appears to be really the only one that's posing an immediate threat. And I'm going to cross my fingers and really hope that the rationale for needing a tornado warning with this was just because these winds had become so strong and there was this semblance of overall rotation in here that it was prudent to do so. Hopefully this thing never put a tornado down. Hopefully this thing is not producing a tornado in any way, shape, or form as we speak, but it doesn't change the overall reality here that this thing still means business. And again, we keep stressing here, at a minimum, we're going to be talking about wind damage to the tune of perhaps 70+ mile-an-hour wind gusts. The overall signature here that I see on reflectivity has gotten a little bit more murky. That too is a good thing. I'll throw this out there too. Just because this particular storm, again, hopefully, is weakening maybe a bit from a tornado standpoint, it could be cycling, which just means we're now injecting additional storms here. And you see you got another pretty good one right over Geneseo and Livonia. Sometimes this additional development can kind of undercut the overall inflow to the parent storm, the original one that we were talking about for a tornado warning. And if one of these ends up taking over, the same environment that allowed that first one to be rationalized as, hey, we got to throw a tornado warning on this, still exists. So we're going to be in a mode here until we get this thing completely out of the area where any one of these is going to be capable of producing damaging winds in a spin-up tornado at most any point. Let's go back here and see if we've got a new update from our velocity scan. All right, so we do. You're going to look at this live with me here. Just do a quick eyeball along this line. So we are still dealing with the damaging wind gust potential right in there. That's now just north of 20. We are in extreme, or pretty much at this point, we can say we're on the county line of a Genesee and getting into Livingston County. We've got apparently a live shot that we can take you. Alan, where'd you say they are? We've got Leanne that's out there in the midst of this. Let's take that. Let's just see kind of what they're looking at. And if you guys can let me know in my ear roughly where Leanne and Emily are here. So they're in Pittsford Victor Road. Let's go ahead and take that real quick. Hopefully they got the camera pointed off to the west. This is a live shot from meteorologist Leanne Byer. So they're looking off to the west as these storms are now inbound. You obviously see a whole bunch of traffic working its way on through. To be clear where they are, and they are headed toward the Victor area right now. They are not under a tornado warning. What they are doing is working their way in progress here toward that tornadic storm right now. And what we're going to periodically do is just do some quick dip and dives in here and give you eyeballs on this, just visuals of what they're contending with obviously safety in mind here. We're not going to be putting Leanne within the core of where this is, but just getting us an overall sampling here of what some of you are going to end up dealing with as we start getting closer to 5 o'clock for that drive home. So we'll do that periodically. And guys, let me know if at any point here Leanne kind of raises her hand and says, hey, we've got something worth seeing. We'll dart back in there again. All right, so nothing in here immediately concerning. It is very difficult right now for me to pinpoint where we would have a tornado on the ground. I see a lot of wind gust potential in this. I see a few areas, probably one right in there. And then number two that stands out to me, and this might be the bigger game in town right now, would be right about there. So we are now pushing this east of Leroy. We're still talking loosely right along 20, but at this stage here, the worst of our wind gust potential, we're probably going to be able to trim out northeast Wyoming, and shortly, maybe within the next 5 minutes or so, trimming out southeast Genesee County in there too. But you're starting to get that little bit of a kink showing up here. So we're not done yet, folks. I guess that is my point out of this. We've got a little ways to go here. And unfortunately, we have a lot of real estate still out ahead of this that we're going to have to keep a close watch. There you go. All right, so they're already going in lockstep here. They have now trimmed that warning down, and it's tough to see just with this overall mess here. Presumably, all they've done now is left over this warning into Livingston County. So if you are in Wyoming, you are in Genesee County, the weather is nasty. It is not a lot of fun right now. I hear you, I get you. But our tornado threat, our immediate concern for damaging wind gusts, our immediate concern that there could be a tornado on the ground, has now shifted fully off to your east. This is now a Livingston County exclusive. Farther to the north here, as we get into Monroe County, note there's the warning, gets trimmed right there at the Monroe County line. There is no tornado warning in Monroe County. You could still get some damaging wind gust potential as you see that part of the warning here, which basically carves a path through Henrietta and the south side of Rochester here too. And we've got some nasty stuff on the west side. I don't want to take away from that, but that's not producing severe weather. A lot of lightning, a lot of heavy rain. There's probably gusty winds in there. The weather is going to be miserable there. But what we will often see is when you have a storm that has taken over, and this is really taken over, this guy right in here, when it does that, it likes to strip the energy of the atmosphere and gobble it all up for itself. So more times than not always, but more times than not, storms that are north of that are going to have a very hard time ingesting the kind of energy that would be sufficient for them to misbehave and cause problems. More often than not, that individual storm and the stuff that develops out ahead of it, especially on the south and southeast side, will then prove to be capable of probably causing some issues here too. So every couple of minutes you're going to see me go back into our severe folder here. We've got a litany of stuff. We got storm tracks all over the place. At this point for me, we're kind of verbalizing where we're seeing things instead of just drawing generic stuff. We'd like to be more detailed than that. A lot of times if I draw just a big storm track, you're going to see a lot of town names and a lot of cities on there that folks are going to get scared about and worried about here when ultimately there's probably not a whole lot to be worried about with that. But waiting on the new scan, that's going to come in within probably the next minute or so. That damaging wind gust signature there, I would imagine in the new scan, will have jumped. That will probably be approaching the Wheatland area. There it is. New scan just came in. Same overall mindset here. That's not great. Yeah, that's a pretty potent one. In fact, I'm going to step off here, and we call this put a query on it. We basically take radar and we say, all right, how strong are the winds that you are estimating in this right now? And let's look at this together. So this is just on the west side of the Avon area. Radar estimating about 70 mile-an-hour winds. Now, a lot of this is aloft. How much of that is actually translating down to the ground here, down to the surface, remains to be seen. Often it's a slightly lower number, thankfully, but yeah, 70 miles an hour, folks. So tornado or not, and honestly at this point, I don't know that I much care the distinction between those two. This is going to be producing damage. I can't find a pathway that this thing hasn't been producing some wind damage here. And now we get to play the game as some of these stronger wind gusts start to wind back up again. Is this going to try to tighten up? Is this going to try to be in the process here of maybe briefly producing a tornado again? And at this point, now we're getting into more dangerous territory here because this thing is fast approaching 390. So maybe this is an appropriate time to give you a heads up here, as we're now about 4:11 into our afternoon. Traffic is going to be picking up. Anybody and everybody, if you can avoid it right now, don't be on 390. Don't be on 390 south of the thruway all the way to, let's say, probably about Geneseo here. That's a huge area, and no, not that entire area is going to deal with problems or tornadoes or damaging wind. But within that, you don't want to be out there. We don't want you out there. Just wait this out. This thing is going to end up jumping to the other side of 390 within 10 to 15 minutes. Now, it's going to be more issues for other people, obviously. We're just sliding that around a little bit here. But I don't want you on 390 with this thing coming on by. So if you don't have to be, just wait. Hold off at work for a little bit here. I'm going to mention, too, because we have seen an additional storm that's tried to fire here. So this is on the north side of Geneseo, just to the west of 390 right now. That's Livonia. Are we starting to get a little bit of something trying to get going here? And then the next logical question that we have to ask with that, if the answer to that is yes, does this start to choke off a little bit some of the potency of that? And that goes back to what we talked about here with a little bit of a changing of the guard on how new storms start to fire around, the old ones decay, the old ones start to die out, and we just play this kind of game of jumping jacks basically out of this. Yeah, that thing is now starting to rip-roar. There could certainly be some hail potential in there. So this thing's going to end up jumping northward. This will cross 20 between Avon and the Lima area, and it will probably lift northward here into about the Rush community too. So that one could be one that we watch as it starts to enter into Monroe County. We're getting close to the point now with the way that particular warning was drawn that the National Weather Service in Buffalo is going to have to make a decision here. Do they reissue this, or do they allow it to expire? And you can see some gusty wind potential in there, but nothing that super jumps off the page. This is still, that is a really potent damaging wind gust signature there. And it's probably right over you in the Avon area right now. Just these radar scans come in periodically every 5 minutes or so. So that's going to be pretty much right over you. Additional areas of interest as we go farther off to the southwest here. We're talking about gusty wind potential. Velocity, by the way, what you're looking at with these different colors with red and green. Red is a wind that is moving away from the radar. Green is toward. So anytime that we see these two close together, that's radar's way of telling us we've got rotation. When you see more of a linear fashion to this, that's a straight line damaging wind gust potential if it's going to happen. At a minimum, it's just going to be strong wind gusts here. But what we're trying to avoid, we call these little kinks, these little embedded areas within that parent line that's kind of straight, where you've got some spots that jut out or jut in, and it's a sign that the storm is ingesting a little bit of rotation in there and causing some issues perhaps. So I am eagerly awaiting here the new scan. We're going to end up putting that core of wind gust potential here, of wind damage potential, pretty darn close to 390. So that's going to be 390 here, very close to the county line of Monroe and Livingston. Again, that's an if we still have this. And thankfully, that's the game I think we are playing right now, that this is a game of ifs as opposed to certainties here. So tornado warning still holding tight, but you see what I mean. We're starting to get to the end of the line here. Farther to the north, that core of lightning, and there is a lot of it. This is very electrically charged, getting into Monroe County here too. But to be very clear, there's not a whole lot in Monroe County that overly concerns us right now unless you are near Rush, unless you are near Henrietta. We're in the southern part of the county here as that storm has taken over. This stuff on the west side could have some small hail and gusty wind potential working towards Sweden, Hilton, Parma. You're going to be in that. That'll slide eastward along 104, Greece, Irondequoit, eventually toward Webster here too. And now we just get to wait and see. And it looks like they may have allowed this to expire, because that to me looks like that is a flood warning out of that. So before we get, Natalie, I'll give you a heads up here. We may be getting ready to toss things back to you here shortly. Let's just do our diligence and make sure we're looking at this appropriately. Everything's good. Yeah, that's going to be a flash flood warning. So they have now elected to say we're going to keep this as a severe thunderstorm warning. The rotation has weakened enough that we have lost the immediate and imminent tornado threat out of this. Please do not take that as an all clear within the core of this as it continues to tear its way eastward, closer toward 390 right now. The damaging straight line wind gust potential here remains quite significant. That's the new scan. I got to tell you, I don't love it. This still looks like a problem with regard to wind damage potential, and now it looks like a problem that is going to skirt the extreme southern part of Monroe County. If you've got a zip code on the south side of Rush, this is crossing 390. This is going to be crossing 15A. And then within that, too, we got a few other little squirrely features trying to show up here to the southeast. So significant damaging wind gust potential continues. But as is our policy here, we're on for active tornado warnings. At this moment, we no longer have one. Be aware, though, this is still a pretty big deal storm, and at any point this could spin back up, and you know what we're going to do. We're going to pop right back up here. But Natalie, we're going to be sending it your way here shortly. We're going to let this kind of run its course for a little bit here, too. Guys, do we by chance have any live shots from Leanne? Yeah, we're gonna check and see where Leanne is. We sent her off to the south here, so she's probably roundabout in this ballpark. So Leanne is going to be fast approaching here, the core of this. We're on West Jefferson Road right now, and presumably here Leanne and Emily. Emily is our photojournalist who is driving here. So Leanne is operating the camera safely from the passenger seat. You are looking at that severe warned storm here off to the west. Thankfully, we do not have an active tornado warning at this moment. What we do have is an upper echelon severe thunderstorm warning. When I say that, I mean this storm is not your garden variety. I think the wind gust potential out of this is an uptick in terms of overall echelon capability here. Looks like we got a new event, a new severe thunderstorm warning now for Monroe and Ontario. So Alan, if we could, pop me back up here. We'll take the radar again. And we'll just, let's take a peek at where they just drew this. I'm wondering if it's a redrawing here of the overall same one. All right, so they've extended this outward. You see that flashing orange now. This is a continuation of that same original storm, and we're now entering our southeast communities here in Rochester. Damaging wind gusts and some hail are going to be your primary issues out of that. This warning goes all the way into far west Wayne County. It also includes a lot of Ontario County, too, all the way to about Canandaigua here. And it's probably a prudent call, not just that core that we've been following this whole time, but frankly, every one of these storms up and down that line appears to be at least somewhat problematic here. And we can bring up reflectivity again. That one continues to kind of take over here, and that's going to be a very interesting one to watch play out just north of Livonia as that continues to work its way closer toward the southern part of Monroe County. And one more time here before we throw things over to Natalie to start this off with our, I guess now delayed newscast here. I want one more peek. Yeah, not a whole lot that's changed. There's going to be your wind damage potential. That's pretty much right over 390 as we speak. So here's what we're going to do. Natalie, we're going to let you take over here from here. I'm still going to be hanging out back here for the remainder of these next couple of hours. If and when we have something else that tries to flare back up here, we will be back. But for the moment, Natalie, it's all yours.